Hi, I'm Jason Weeks. I'm the co-founder of Vendorable, and I'm here today to talk to you about agent commissions. So it's something that I get asked a fair bit, obviously running Vendorable.com, but I thought I'd take the opportunity to run through a few different types of agent commissions that we see and highlight, for the benefit of a few different people in a few different jurisdictions, what is normal both in Australia and also abroad. So real estate agent commissions are typically governed by estate agent or broker or realtor legislation specific to the jurisdiction itself. And in Australia, that is each of the states and territories. In the UK and Ireland, it is the UK regime is broken up into England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland and Ireland. And in the US, broker commissions are obviously governed by each of the state-based legislatures. And often also have some city and county council nuance. Estate agent commissions are often thought about in terms of fixed versus percentage, and they are almost always considered contingent. A couple of these assumptions are not actually accurate, but only because we often don't interact with or come into contact with estate agent commissions unless we're actually selling a house, either in our personal or professional capacity. So the two most common types that people focus on are, as I said, percentage or fixed, and the idea of contingent being it's contingent upon a sale is more aligned in people's minds often with percentage commission than it is with fixed, because a percentage commission by its name indicates that the commission will be a percentage of the sale price, whereas a fixed commission will be what it is nominated by the agent, realtor, broker, regardless of the price that is achieved for the asset. So I've highlighted two of the most common types of commission structures, fixed or percentage. The third that is commonly discussed is ratchet, and a ratchet is simply an indication that the commission that an estate agent or a broker or a realtor achieves ratchets up based on the performance of that individual as they achieve the sale price. So an example might be that you would really like your house to be sold for $1.5 million, and you would be ecstatic if an agent achieved north of that, because that is the upper end of your expectation. And a ratchet commission would simply be, I will pay you a certain amount to achieve a sale price up to $1.5 million, but I will pay you a bonus, some sort of performance linked incentive if you achieve a price north of $1.5 million. So a ratchet, historically, most people have thought of that as sort of percentage on percentage. And what I mean by that is, for example, I will pay you 2% of the value of an asset up to the $1.5 million we discussed, and I will pay you 3% or 4% for every dollar you achieve over $1.5 million. But that's not always necessarily the case. Some people structure a ratchet as a fixed and percentage. So for example, in my prior example, I may be willing to pay you a $20,000 fixed commission to sell my house up to $1.5 million, but then I'm willing to incentivize you with a sort of 3 or 4%, maybe even 5% on something much higher, but percentage-wise, but only on the portion above. And so in that instance, the ratchet is functioned similarly for the portion above 1.5 million, but for the portion below, or wherever you achieve a sale price, if you don't exceed 1.5 million, it might just be a fixed fee that you are happy to pay. So the idea that a ratchet has to be a percentage and a percentage is not necessarily correct. Again, it will vary as to what you're allowed to do in different jurisdictions, and that will be governed by legislation. Not every jurisdiction permits ratchet structuring, and certainly it is a good idea to have a clear understanding within your estate agent agreement as to whether you're operating under a fixed or a percentage-based commission, and if you are going to engage in a ratchet, the conditions under which that ratchet will apply. so that there's no confusion amongst yourself and your estate agent. I also thought I'd highlight that for people who are in, often Australia and New Zealand and the UK, we're not exposed to it, but in the US and Canada, there are often heavy presence of buyer's agents. In Australia, UK and New Zealand, there are buyer's agents, and it is potentially something that they're remunerated on a percentage-based commission, sometimes on a flat fee, but it's more common for the buyer to actually just incur that fee themselves. And a lot of people, given our auction culture in Australia, may hire someone to be their buyer's agent to represent them at an auction. And again, that'll be a fee paid for by the buyer, often regardless of whether there's a result, and then some sort of bonus fee if there is a result. But in the US and Canada and in other jurisdictions with a strong buyers and sellers agent culture, the commission that the selling agent typically originally negotiates with a vendor will in fact be split between a selling agent and a buying agent, and the split will be agreed upon by the selling agent with the buyer's agent, and the buyer's agent will keep that in mind. So for example, if there was a 6% commission or let's say a 4% commission on the sale of an asset in the US, then a seller's agent and a buyer's agent may each take away 2% of the sales commission on the total value of the asset, and the sales commission will still come out from the vendor's proceeds. So let's say we sold a house for $1 million and there was a 5% commission, that would be $50,000, and then that would be shared equally between the two agents, for example, $25,000 each, 2.5% each. But that is agreed upon between the agents themselves, and so it may not necessarily be an even 50-50 split, depending on whether one party worked harder on the deal, introduced more buyers, whether the buyer was already known but just represented. There are a few different factors there as to why a commission would be split equally versus divided up separately. But in Australia, as I mentioned, and in other jurisdictions where there's not as strong a buyer's agent culture, there are still buyer's agents around, and they'll often operate on a fixed fee for certain services. If they are percentage based, they might be acting in a greater capacity for an individual, so perhaps they're acting for someone as their financial administrator, or maybe they're acting entirely as the person. Let's say there's some returning expats or people moving from overseas, and a lot of extra work is being done by the agent to be the purchaser of the property for a buyer. And then the next question we always get is, what is the best commission structure for individuals to accept or agree to? And the real answer is the one that you're comfortable signing up to, and the one that is going to motivate the estate agent or broker or realtor to achieve a great result for you. But the fact is that it depends on the situation, because it will depend upon how difficult the asset is to sell, the conditions under which you've given the estate agent time to execute a sale, and therefore how much attention they need to give it, because maybe you're trying to compress the sales timeline. There will also be considerations around what you can afford to pay, and there may be some negotiation around that if it's in the context of an insolvency sale. There's also the idea that if a sale is more likely to proceed, like it's a forced sale or something like that, if there's not going to be a reserve, if it's going to sell no matter what, that there might be some pricing out of commission because the risk of the transaction falling over is decreased. And then on top of that, there's the concept that in these jurisdictions where commission is being shared, there will need to be a consideration for how much the commission is required to incentivize particular brokers or agents to bring in buyers, and so a sales agent will be trying to advise on that to make sure that there's enough commission to incentivize themselves, but at the same time to incentivize the buyer's agent. And then there's also some considerations around, as I mentioned before, not just the difficult sale, but also the type of asset. So there's often, so let's say it's a very large scale commercial project, and you might have a large team working on it. If you're selling like an entire building in a city, like obviously the commission structure around that is going to be very different, and there'll be a lot of overhead attached to that. There might even be an EI and a tender process. So the idea of a best commission really should be the best possible agent for yourself at the right price at the right time, and something that you're willing to sign up. So I'd love to hear from you your experience based on any sales you've conducted as to what your preferred commission structure is, what you've seen. If you're in a jurisdiction that I haven't mentioned, feel free to leave in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you about what you see in your jurisdiction as to how people sell, the commissions they like to pay, and any other observations. And I'll chat to you again soon. Thanks very much.